Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Umbrella Academy Season 1. Of course, as the title suggests, there will be spoilers, but they will be in the second half of this review, so of course I'll let you guys know when I'm getting to the spoilers. Keeping it spoiler free, of course, for this first half, I really enjoyed the show. I thought it was great. I don't know what the deal was with Netflix. Like, all the trailers I kept seeing were saying coming soon, and I'm pretty sure the first time I saw the trailer for this show was only last month. So I was like, why did they put coming soon on every trailer? And I just happened to go on Netflix, and that's the only reason I saw that it was even out, was because I just happened to be on it already. And I was like, I literally just saw like a new trailer like 2 days, 2 or 3 days before, and it was still said like coming soon. I thought this was like another month away or something. I'm like, what's wrong? Why didn't they just put the date on there? So I thought that was weird, but got to actually see the show. I believe it's 10 episodes long. I think all episodes are good. I don't think there's a single episode where I'm like, oh, like there's something that happens that's like a lull or like that pointless episode. I think each episode is utilized fairly well. So I really enjoyed the show. I think it's really funny. I think the characters are really, really well done. Like, they're acted well, they are written well. The characters, all the actors, I should say, I think have decent chemistry with each other, especially considering they're playing such crazy characters. Like, everyone's crazy in some way because, the story from the trailer is a guy pretty much buys these kids who are magically born, pretty much. They're just, a bunch of women get pregnant, they have kids, and this rich dude was just like, I'm just going to buy these kids. I'm going to buy as many as I can get. And then he just raises them and tries to make them like superheroes because they have powers and stuff, and they come out kind of effed up because he's just this dude where, like, there wasn't love there. It was just like an experimentation for him, like, how do I do this? Or they have different powers, how can I do this and do that and make them into something big? And that's pretty much it. And then they all come out of it real effed up with superpowers. So very interesting show. Probably have to go with Klaus as my number one. He was funny. I love the actor. I can't think of his actual name, but of course anyone who watched Misfits knows it was like, that was basically just watching the character that he played from Misfits in a different show, and I was like, that's perfect. Like, that's a character that he's probably most well known for, and he did that here, and I was like, yep, loved it 100%. So I was totally fine with that. So Klaus, I would say, was my number one, but I loved all the characters. I thought every one of the kids had something, that was really entertaining. After Klaus, I would definitely go with number five. He was without a doubt my favorite, and he's the kid, like, who's actually a kid the whole time. Loved his character because he's just super funny. I can't give away certain elements of him and why he's so entertaining, but even in the trailer, they mentioned some stuff about what he can do, but it was just good. Like, his character is probably my number one. Klaus was a close second, but I think his character was number one. I feel like Klaus may have just been in the show a little bit more, and that's probably why I had him at number one. But he also goes through some really deep stuff, like all the characters do. But I think Klaus probably has like the best sort of shift as far as the characters go throughout the series, because some crazy stuff ends up happening to him. But really loved it. I thought, like I said, all the characters were well acted. The actors had chemistry. There were like weird twists and turns. There's the big mystery of what in the world is going to happen and how do they basically save the world as dysfunctional superheroes and a dysfunctional family. So everything about that I thought was incredibly well done. And it's like, all right, well, how do they save the world? What destroys the world? Stuff like that. Once again, this is all in the trailer, so if you haven't seen any of the trailers, I'm not spoiling anything. That's how they promote the show. But it's just really interesting. It's like, man, how in the world is this going to end up playing out? And there's like other little mini mysteries thrown in, and then characters have developments, both good and bad, or good characters, hero characters, and the villains have different development throughout the season. And it's like, okay, well, are they going to stick to this path that we've seen, or is something going to shift for them? And that alters the story, and it kind of raises a question, like, are they going to be the same? So is it going to keep the story down this path, or is it going to shift to this way? And if it does shift, will these characters find out, and how's that going to work? So they definitely keep you entertained because there's a lot of little mysteries going on, and then there's the overarching mystery of how do they save the world. And I love the way it was handled, right up to the very end. And it was a heck of a cliffhanger. It was like one of the craziest cliffhangers I've seen for a show to end on this first season. I was just like, huh. So I don't know where this show is headed. I've never read the comic. It is based on a comic book. But it was nuts. It was just like, holy crap, that's a wild way to end a show. Or end a season for a show. And, going into whatever the heck season 2 is going to be. Because I hopefully this show gets to season 2. I think it was so well done. And like, they clearly put a bunch of money in this. There's a character that's CG in this that's like, it was like pretty close to like some Planet of the Apes type CG. And I was like, this is good. Like, they put a lot of money into it, and it looks fantastic every single time it's shown. It's like, that's some great freaking CGI. So without a doubt, they put money into it, and I think it definitely shows. I think every episode of the show is also it has like the black bars. I'm totally blanking on the actual name. It starts with the like anamorphic, I believe, the name anamorphic bars. So it's got the movie sort of look every single episode, which looks nice. I you don't notice it after a while, of course, but every once in a while I'll be like, oh yeah, it's got the bars on it. But it looks good. Like it's filmed well. Like everything about it it looks really well done. So love the show as a whole. If you haven't seen it yet, highly recommend you guys check it out. I think the first episode will have you hooked. Like if that's not your thing, it won't get you. But if it's the type of thing that you would like, just watch the first episode. It's not one of those things where it's like, oh, that's kind of okay, and then you go through and it gets better. It was good right off the start, and I think they do a really good job with showing the characters. Even their actual introductions is pretty clear cut. Like, okay, this is either it's symbolism for who the character is, or it's just outright like this is what's going on with this type of person. So thought it was cool. I like the way it was handled in episode 1 and everything, all the insanity going up until the season finale. But really good. Like I said, I highly recommend you guys check it out. If you are currently going through it and you have any random questions or this or that, I won't spoil stuff, of course, but you can ask some questions. But I did not think that was going to start clicking. But yeah, I highly recommend it because I think it's definitely a fun show. It's got some decent action in it too. It's not like really action heavy. It's more like the dialogue and the comedy. But it's got some decent action scenes in there as well. So those are pretty entertaining. They're also really funny. Like a part of the visual style is like they do some crazy stuff. They also have like one of the wild, the varied music selections. Works very well. It's very Guardians of the Galaxy-esque, but more dramatic. So that's like a darker version of Guardians of the Galaxy. If I had to give it like a super generic like phrase, that's what I would give it. So it's the darker version of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but really well done. So definitely check it out. Gonna be getting into spoilers, so of course, if you have not seen the show, this is where you should probably pause it. Unless you don't care about spoilers, check out the show, come back, let me know what you guys think about it. But moving on to spoilers, I feel like every time I go into spoilers, the first thing I talk about is always the ending because it's just like that's the big thing, and it was insane. I loved the ending for this season because I thought that this was just gonna be like kind of those one and done type of deals. I didn't know how long the like the comic series went, and granted, just because it's talking about the end of the world and stopping it doesn't necessarily mean that would be the end anyway, but it certainly can't be the end considering they didn't stop the end of the world. And I love the way that it played out where they thought they solved the problem and it's like, all right, so Vanya is alive and everything seems okay. And then of course she basically leans back and all the energy shoots out of her chest and it hits the moon. And I was like, I did not see that coming. Like that is very interesting. And you think this is just a total random thing, because of science. You think that would have been obvious, that number 5 would have been like, yeah, the moon's gone because, that's how we get light at night. It's the moon reflects the light from the sun, actually. Like, the moon doesn't light up itself. So, I thought that was very interesting. And I was like, like when it hit the end, and I was just like, that kind of doesn't make sense a little bit scientifically. Like, if he was there for 30 years, he would have looked up and been like, that's not the moon I'm familiar with. That's a little bit different. It would be like super dark. It would be way darker than anyone would be used to. So thought that was interesting. I didn't think about that much when I first saw it. It was just like, holy crap, that's crazy. But just from like, if you went with a real world perspective, he would have known something was up with the moon. It wouldn't have made a difference, but it would have been something that they at least could have thrown in there, which I think would have also been visually interesting, even though technically we only get the one episode with 5 in the future anyway. But that was just a insane way to end the show where like the apocalypse doesn't actually stop. And then they teleport through time and that's it. That's the end. Like they teleport and they go somewhere in time. I would assume to the past, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. But they teleport just in time and then, the world's been wiped away and it's just like everybody's dead. So they live. One of the agents lives, not Mary J. Blige. So the other guy, Hazel lives. He ends up taking his lady, the donut lady, and they jump through time just before the explosion hits them. So they're alive still. So we'll probably see them in the next season. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought everyone back. It's a time traveling show. So considering how that plays out, different time periods, depending on where they go, it totally works. So it'll be interesting to see how they play around with that concept of the characters being alive. Because, if they're jumping through time, you would still run into your past self if you're in a specific time period. Like if you were there, then you would run into yourself, and that's just how it would play out. So it'll be interesting to see how season 2 ends up playing out. But I loved this show. I thought it was really good. Crazy ending. Honestly, it got a little weird at the end when Vanya goes like full evil, and I was like, huh. And they did. I thought the CG was weird. Admittedly, they gave her like the ghost face deal with like the demon eyes and all that. I was like, it looks a little weird. I just thought, it just looked weird to me. I was like, it looks a little weird, and it kind of fit, I guess, the comic book aesthetic a little bit, where especially at the end, with her, basically her powers like building up, like she turns, like her outfit turns white, and the violin turns white as well. So that's like straight from the comic book, but I just thought it was a little weird with the CG, and I was like, something about it just doesn't look as cool. Like it looks weird with her being like so serious, and like she's going to the show and everything, and she's in her suit and everything. And I was like, I don't know, something about it just looked a little off. Like it worked when she first like breaks through the door, and like she's when she's dressed normal, it looked okay. But for some reason, when she was dressed up in the suit, for some reason it just made the CG like stand out, and it just looked weirder. Maybe it was because she was wearing like a black outfit and her face was like pale white. So for some reason that contrast was just huge compared to the first time she did it, where she was wearing, I think she was wearing like her blue shirt or something like that, like just a plain blue shirt. So it was like, okay, it blends a little bit better, and it was still obvious, and it felt like it was just her eyes at first. And then in that next episode, when she, the ending when she went like full evil, it felt like, I was just like, man, it's like her face is totally white. I do not know why this stupid thing is doing that. I hate that so much. But it was just like, that's weird. I just thought that was just, like I said, my perspective on it was just like, it looks off when it's like the full face. When they first show it, I feel like it's just the eyes. So it was probably the whole face, and like I said, it was the color of her shirt that allowed it to blend a little better for me. But when it was her in like the suit, it almost felt like her entire head was just CG. Like, because it was like her whole face, but it was just like, I feel like there's no part of it that's real, even though it was just color correcting on her face specifically. I was like, it just feels like her entire face is just fake. Like they just made a fake head. Like that's just how it felt. And I was like, it's just so CG heavy with the color change of her face. It just makes it look like it's not even a real person, even though it's clearly, still Ellen Page. It's just like something about it is so CG with the color change that it just looks super duper fake to me. So I was like, it throws me out like a little bit, but that was only in like that very beginning where like when she's walking in slow motion and stuff like that, and she's sitting on the bus, it just looked weird. So it didn't bug me that much because we don't, it's not like they focus that much on it, but really enjoyed it. We get to see Klaus somewhat enhance his abilities at the very end. I thought for sure Ben was going to come back to life like 100%. Like they mentioned the Conjuring thing, and then when they talk about how he hadn't really tapped into his powers, I was like, oh, so maybe he can like straight up resurrect people if he tries hard enough. He was able to utilize Ben physically, but would he be able to just like, poof, like you're alive if he found a way to like really tap into his ability. So I'm sure we'll see more of that. Ben might actually be a full-on character in the next season. We never found out what happened to him either. I was waiting for that like the whole season. I was like, all right, so how did he die? What happened? They don't talk about it. We don't get the answer. So we either, season 2 or season 3, however long it took in the comics to make that story up. So we'll probably have to wait a little bit for that one. But I was looking forward to it. I was like, man, what happened to Ben? Like, how did he end up dying? So I was kind of looking forward to seeing that. Sadly, we didn't get that answer. But clearly, considering he's like an adult, he died when he was older. The way they made it seem like he died, because I think with Luther's episode where they show how he got like huge, I think they said it was like 6 years ago. So I would assume Ben died like, I mean, the way they show the age of the character, they made him the same age as everybody else pretty much, but I would assume he'd have to have died as a kid. Like he wouldn't have been that old when he actually died. Like he would have been like 10 years younger as a ghost. I feel like he should have been at least. So I was like, he doesn't look like a teenager. He looks like he's like around my age, like mid-20s or something. But that was just me. I was just like, I feel like as a ghost, if he died as a kid, he'd still be young. He'd still be that person. So they might explain that. I doubt it, but they might just be like, just go with it. But we don't find out how he ended up dying. We just know, based on the quote that's on this thing, is like maybe, hopefully the darkness went in and you can find the light or something. So I don't know if his powers just took over him and he couldn't control it and he like literally ripped him apart. That would be interesting, but either way, we gotta wait for that one to come out. But love how they handled the characters. Vanya losing it and like slicing Allison's throat, crazy scene. Allison may or may not have her powers in the next season, or maybe it won't come back until like the middle of the season and the vocal cords actually have to heal. So that was pretty nuts. Just in general, it's a crazy freaking show, but I loved it. The reveal that the guy was actually evil. At first, I was like, man, that kind of sucks because it was like it felt a little bit cliche where I was like, oh, the boy, there's suspicion thrown on Leonard, or not. Like, I can't remember which name was like the real. I think Harold was his real name. So the suspicion is put on him, and then we find out like, oh, he gave her flowers and stuff, and then they show him later, and he's pouring the pills away, and I was like, okay, well, he's actually a bad guy. Something weird is going on here. And for a little while, I thought that he did have powers. I thought that he knew that she had powers, and maybe wherever he was with his family, he realized at some point that the same thing was happening to him, where it was almost like anxiety pills were used on him to basically suppress his powers. And I thought that's how it was going to end up playing out, where he'd reveal like, I have powers too. And it turns out he just wished he had powers, and it actually, it kind of fit in line with what I was thinking. Aside from the fact that he actually had powers, it was just that he wishes he had powers. He was born on the same day as everyone else. So it was this crazy obsession where all he wanted was to basically be the reason that Vanya, was able to utilize her powers and kind of have her wipe out the rest of the family a little bit. So, excuse me. So it was very interesting. It was like, okay, really weird. Just in general, just super weird. Just a crazy character. And, he killed his dad. He killed the woman who was first chair so that Vanya could actually even, have the opportunity to be first chair and, actually like go for it. So he's killing people. He hires the guys to beat him up. They got a little crazy. They knock his eye out. He drags the one dude that actually survived, who was in urgent care. He finds somehow this dude is like magic. Honestly, like he's just killing people. He was like a ninja because he killed this dude in a hospital. He took him out of a room and like had his body on the outside of a building. And I'm like, maybe he does have superpowers and he doesn't realize it because he was doing some stuff where I'm like, there's just no reason this dude should be getting away with this sort of stuff. But he's just killing people left and right. He's an insane character, but I like the way it was handled. And, it's revealed, of course, when Vanya finds the book in basically the second timeline. So I thought that was a cool scene, and she lost it and killed him. And it was like, oh, cool, we stopped the apocalypse. And it seemed like that was how it was going to play out. And then there was going to be a different future. And then it turned out, no, Vanya was always the one that destroyed it because they found out the stuff about the house being blown up. So really crazy. Really love the show. Definitely looking forward to season 2. I hope we get a season 2. I haven't really looked up too many reviews. From what I've heard so far, I watched like literally one thing on it. They enjoyed it, the people that I watched on YouTube. So I think it'll be good. I think it's doing good enough. Hopefully, a lot of people watched it. Like, it has a great trailer to get you hooked on it. So once I saw the trailer once, I was like, that's a show I'm going to check out. So I kind of been waiting for it, and I was super happy to see that it actually came out. So I loved it. I can't wait for a season 2. I really, really hope that this does end up getting one. But all in all, I thought it was great. Of course, we'll love to know what you guys thought about it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. Of course, if you're a comic reader and you decided you wanted to check out the show, how would you say it compares? Obviously, if you could put like 0 spoilers, that would be great. Because I don't want to know, and I'm probably not going to pick up the book myself. I might pick it up. I'll check it out and see like if the story's totally completed. That's one of those things where I was like, I might pick it up, but if it's still ongoing, then I highly doubt I'll end up doing that. But either way, I would love to know what you guys thought about this. Like I said, if you are a comic reader, how do you feel like it stacks up and how it compares? As far as the pacing, do you think the pacing was well done? Considering they did it in 10 episodes, I think it was pretty well done. I think, just from a perspective of watching a bunch of shows that have been based off of comic books, I feel like they probably covered a decent chunk of stuff. They probably didn't answer every single thing that was answered by the time they got to the explosion, in the comics. Like, I feel like they probably would have already answered the stuff about Ben, but I could be wrong. That could be one of those things. Sometimes, people make shows and it's like, well, you don't get a backstory for like, a full year or something worth of comic, and it's like, oh, finally figured out what I wanted that backstory to be. And that's how writing goes. People will have a backstory that's mysterious, and then eventually they're like, oh, I got it now. And then that's when you finally get the answer. So there probably wasn't even an answer by the time they got there. And it's like, I'll figure it out as they're time traveling, and then they eventually talk about it. So that could be how it just naturally played out, within the story. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do for season 2. But definitely want to know what you guys thought about it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.